I've come across this clip that's scary, but easy to understand because it's relatable, but it really does well in highlighting the realities of being a teenager. Let's check it out. Okay, so this clip, when I saw it, I just thought it was worded so well. This man, who I'd done a small bit of research on, has written a few books on protecting children and fear and various different things. And in this particular clip, he explains things in a way that I just found really, I don't know how to explain it. It kind of just hits you and you cannot deny what he's saying. It does make things feel a little bit scary, like the world is a scary place, but not that the world is a scary place. It's more so that being a teenager is such a vulnerable stage of your life that you are open to exploitation of those around you. That's what really struck me about it. Let me say that again. And I feel like it's so relatable because we were all teenagers once. So we know it. It's not alien to us. We remember how it used to feel to be a teenager. In particular, when you start going through puberty, your body's changing, your hormones are changing, what you're focusing on is completely changing. I mean, you think about when you're 10 years old, the nature of you, and then when you get to like 13, 14, like everything is changing. And you're trying to find your circles, your paths, your areas of interest, and you've all of a sudden become interested in sex and what that's all about, and that's a mystery, and it feels like this crazy thing, and it's nerve-wracking, and the world starts changing. It's a phenomenal time, right? It's a phenomenal time, but that leaves you open. That leaves you open to people that want to take advantage of that stage of your life. So, the clip. Let's get straight into it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it from start to finish. It's 3 minutes long. I'm going to play it from start to finish, and then we'll just go from there. Let's check it out.
As you can see, we are joined by two teenagers, Grant and Ellie, who are going to help us talk about some of the strategies that teenage boys use, that they learned from their fathers and their older brothers, and from movies and from television shows. And so I'll come to them in a couple of minutes. I want to just begin with the more serious part, which is that teenage girls are the most victimized element of our society. And there's a few reasons that's so. There was a survey of prison inmates a few years ago, and they had committed the majority of their crimes, 75%, against teenage girls. And we asked ourselves why. Why is that the case? And it's because teenage girls offer less resistance than adult women do. They pose less risk to a predator. They're perceived as sexual objects, and they are exploring the dynamics of that relationship with men. So they're getting into a use of their sexuality and exploring the very nature of how the relationships go with men. Teenage girls also mix a feeling of immortality with their budding sexuality, and they often see fearlessness as a form of sophistication.
Okay, I am going to stop it. I'm not going to play it from start to finish because I just want to say stuff. I just want to say stuff because I love this angle that this man is coming at this topic. Because he starts that video with talking about predators. I am really not sure about that term, by the way. labeling people with that term. I much rather criminal, because I think predator kind of suggests that they are they're like they're I was just about to say abhuman. I don't think that's a word, is it? But like they're not human, and maybe people would like to say that they're not human if they carry out crimes of a sexual nature. But I just think predator means it couldn't be the man round the corner. It couldn't be the man in the family. It couldn't be. I just think it yeah. I hope I explained that kind of well. But the point that I wanted to make before I went off track with that, he starts with talking about, I'm going to use the word criminal, and the criminal exploiting that young teenager. But then very cleverly, or very interestingly, he then starts talking about actually the vulnerable nature of somebody in their teenage years. Not that it's their fault for that, but that's how we can see and start to understand how the crime can be implemented on a teenager so easily because of their vulnerable nature at that stage of their life. I opened this video with talking about teenagers in general. I meant all genders. But he's talking about teenage girls in particular being the most vulnerable people in that teenage stage. I like the way he talks, and for anybody that's listening to this in podcast format, don't worry. The video that I'm reviewing, it's the gentleman who's talking, he's talking to a crowd of people. So you're not missing out if you're only listening to this in your earphones through audio. But for those who are with us on YouTube, you can see this gentleman here. And I'm going to put his name in the show notes so that you can search him if you wish to do so. Let's continue.
I'm not afraid to go to this party. I'm not afraid to get in this car with this person. And that feels like being an adult. And all of this coincides with the enhanced vulnerability that comes specifically because they're away from their parents. They're often taking their first job, their first date, their first drive alone in a car. And all of these things are happening at the same time. And then the big one, they are experimenting often with drugs and alcohol, and certainly the boys in their environment are. And if I'm comparing drugs and alcohol, of course, both are drugs, and alcohol is by far the one that has the most sinister impact on our society.
It's phenomenal, isn't it, when you think about young teenagers who are trying to find themselves, who are experimenting, who are very easily influenced, easily led, playing around with their personality. And that is the age where the partying culture really exists. It's overpowering in the teenage years. All you want to do is party. Well, that's what I was like anyway. And we add alcohol and drugs into the mixer. It's like, no wonder terrible things are happening at parties when it comes to crimes of a sexual nature. Another thing is we don't often think about teenagers sexually abusing other teenagers. I have heard a statistic, which I'm not going to quote because I can't remember the exact numbers, but most of the crimes of a sexual nature are committed in peer groups. It's not adults on children or adults on teenagers. It's mostly young people on young people. You think about how chaotic, like now you're an adult and you look down, you look at that environment. Let's take a group of 16-year-olds. Let's take a house party for an example. Whatever teenager was brave enough to do it, their parents have gone on holiday and they've decided to throw a house party, and you get a load of 16-year-olds with no adults around, drugs and alcohol present. It's like a recipe for disaster. No doubt, though, a lot of fun for anybody that enjoyed their partying. I certainly did. Lots of fun, but also without the right guidance, it's like yeah, you can see how that the nature of teenagers and that teenage stage of your life is so erratic. Let's continue.
Now, does this mean that teenage girls should be wary of every single man they meet, or should apply a kind of prove to me that you're not dangerous test to everybody? And I think the answer is no. For one thing, there is no way to prove that you're not dangerous other than to live a long life and not be dangerous to somebody. Men who are not dangerous don't have to prove anything. They simply act appropriately from the moment they meet you forevermore. And the strategies used by predators are specifically designed to gain someone's trust. And so if you have a prove to me that you're not dangerous approach, the strategies are simply amped up, and they might work just as well on you as they would if you didn't have that attitude. The reality is that the vast majority of people a young girl encounters have no sinister intent for her, will never do her harm, and she need not be concerned about them. But when she gets the signal, just as with women, then it's important to respond to the intuitive signal. However, it's happening at a time when she's concerned about popularity. She's concerned about being branded as a bitch. She's concerned about being branded as anything. And so men have a particularly strong advantage when it comes to teenage girls.
Okay, that's the end of the clip. Let's talk about what he's mentioned there at the end of that clip about, and he uses the word men because he's referring to adults on teenagers. But I just want to open it up, and any type of sexual interaction. Let's talk about that. Any type of sexual interaction when it comes to teenagers and teenagers interacting with adults. It's like he mentioned it there that you're so self-conscious. Have I said that right? Yeah, I think so. So self-conscious as a teenager. You're so concerned with how other people are viewing you. You're so concerned with your reputation. If there ever was anything untoward, even if somebody sent you text messages that were you didn't even ask for, let's take the common thing, dick pics. A girl doesn't want to go and tell their teacher or their parent about that boy that keeps messaging them naked pictures and they haven't asked for them, because they don't want to be seen as a snitch or a grass. They don't want to be teased by that boy's friends. They don't want to become unpopular. They don't want to be blamed for anything. It's like, honestly, when you start thinking about it like this, your teenage stage of your life is like, you wouldn't want to go back there, would you? You wouldn't want to go back there. Let me tell you about a story that I talk about quite often now in these presentations that I'm doing in schools, organisations, businesses, and they're really going so well. And during the Q&A session, we explore so many different topics, and this story often becomes relevant in our discussion. Let me tell you about it. So I was on TikTok, and I've now got a TikTok account. My TikTok's doing really well, by the way. It's approaching 20,000 followers, and that's great because TikTok is generally the younger ages social media platform, their preferred one, and so I can reach young people that way, and it's going really well. So I spent some time going through TikTok, learning how the platform works, and by the way, they have constructed that phenomenally well, because it's hugely addictive and you can lose an hour in a second. Honestly, it's actually so good when it comes to keeping your attention. As I was going through my TikTok feed, TikTok showed me a woman who was extremely attractive, and it must be showing me that because it knows I'm a 37-year-old male and I may be interested in that. And it caught my attention, and I watched the whole video. I can't remember what this woman was. Actually, no, sorry. It was a live. It was a TikTok live. So that's one of their features. And this woman was on TikTok live. That's how it was. And so she's come on live. It showed me the live. I'm like, whoa, she's hot. So I've watched for a little while longer, And then I'm like, oh, I wonder what people are saying in the comment section. So I click on the comment section, and it is just blokes, men being so like, just hurling comments at this woman and basically treating her like a sexual object. Now, she was dressed very in revealing clothing. So those men, I'm pretty sure, would defend themselves and say she was asking for that type of attention. That's another conversation. So I read through the comments. So I've spent 3 or 4 minutes now on this woman's TikTok live, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's enough. That's crazy, but that's enough. So I keep going down my TikTok feed, but now TikTok has seen that I am potentially interested in seeing more women like this. So now on my feed, it's throwing me women, and then it's throwing me all these women in live environments because it wants to try to grab me and see if I'm interested in more. And then I come across another TikTok live, and this time it's 2 females. But this time these females look super young. They must have been no older than 15 years old. No joke. And that's allowed because I think TikTok Live is available on people's TikTok account as long as you've registered over 13 years old. And of course, you're just typing in a number when you register anyway, so that's no real way to police it. But anyway, these 2 girls, I was like, oh my God, they're so young. One was in a crop top, so her stomach was showing, and the other one was in a jumper. And I was like, oh my goodness, I wonder what's in the comment section here. So I press the comment section and I start going through, and it is just men treating these 2 young girls like sexual objects, but saying things like, you're both hot, you're both sexy, you're both pretty, I wish I could see more of you, why don't you DM me, I'd love to take you out, why don't we meet? Now, for us adults, that's horrifying, of course, because we know what that all means. But to a 15-year-old girl, when their nature at 15 is they desire compliments, they desire attention, they're seeking attention in particular on their looks. Right? I mean, even us as adults, if somebody tells us we look great, you know, you meet somebody for dinner or drinks or socializing, or you go around their house and, oh, by the way, you look great at the moment. I mean, that makes you feel good. We're human beings. But at 15 years old, that is like gold. Those kind of compliments are gold. So you're now on TikTok Live and you're just getting constant dopamine hits, right? And it's making you feel good. Now, really, really interesting. All the comments were mostly directed at the girl who had the crop top on, showing her stomach. People saying, that's a pretty top. Where did you buy that from? Would love to see you in something a bit more revealing. So she's getting all the attention now. And then I watched the girl in the jumper look uncomfortable, but make some kind of... It was blatantly an excuse. She goes, oh, it's so hot and stuffy in this room, I think I'm going to go and change. So she walks off camera, comes back onto camera, and now she's got a crop top on. Because she wants a bit of the attention. And you're like, oh, I don't know how to feel about that. I want to feel all emotions, sad, frustrated, angry at those men. But those girls are so innocent. That is such an innocent move by that girl. That is her human nature, right? I felt like the scene that I was the scene that I was seeing unfold was just a pure tragedy. I really did. It was a tragedy of the online space. It was a tragedy of the TikTok Live feature. It really was. You know, and those 2 girls are on TikTok. Of course, there's no adult to be seen, and that highlights that makes the point that I often like to make of when a child is on their device, it's almost like they are in a world with no adult guidance. Well, actually, I would say that's facts. When a child is on their tablet, Even let's take a really young child on YouTube Kids. Let's take that example, and they've had enough of that video, and they're scrolling through other videos. But there's adverts popping up everywhere. We don't know if they're age appropriate or not. They're just scrolling through. They're picking another video. They're picking another video. They're seeing adverts. They're potentially getting a message. It's like they're in a world on their own. And these two girls were the same. It's so crazy to see how teenagers' vulnerability is being exploited online. And it almost feels like it's so overwhelming, we have no control. Okay, this is where I want to take this from here. I'd like to watch the video again, make any more final comments. And I've got a couple of other bits that I want to say, and then we'll wrap up. Let's go with that.
As you can see, we are joined by two teenagers, Grant and Ellie, who are going to help us talk about some of the strategies that teenage boys use, that they learned from their fathers and their older brothers, and from movies and from television shows. And so I'll come to them in a couple of minutes. I want to just begin with the more serious part, which is that teenage girls are the most victimized element of our society. And there's a few reasons that's so. There was a survey of prison inmates a few years ago, and they had committed the majority of their crimes, 75%, against teenage girls. And we asked ourselves why. Why is that the case? And it's because teenage girls offer less resistance than adult women do. They pose less risk to a predator. They're perceived as sexual objects, and they are exploring the dynamics of that relationship with men. So they're getting into a use of their sexuality and exploring the very nature of how the relationships go with men. Teenage girls also mix a feeling of immortality with their budding sexuality, and they often see fearlessness as a form of sophistication. I'm not afraid to go to this party. I'm not afraid to get in this car with this person. And that feels like being an adult. And all of this coincides with the enhanced vulnerability that comes specifically because they're away from their parents. They're often taking their first job, their first date, their first drive alone in a car. And all of these things are happening at the same time. And then the big one, they are experimenting often with drugs and alcohol, and certainly the boys in their environment are. And if I'm comparing drugs and alcohol, of course, both are drugs, and alcohol is by far the one that has the most sinister impact on our society. Now, does this mean that teenage girls should be wary of every single man they meet, or should apply a kind of prove to me that you're not dangerous test to everybody? And I think the answer is no. For one thing, there is no way to prove that you're not dangerous other than to live a long life and not be dangerous to somebody. Men who are not dangerous don't have to prove anything. They simply act appropriately from the moment they meet you forevermore. And the strategies used by predators are specifically designed to gain someone's trust. And so if you have a prove to me that you're not dangerous approach, the strategies are simply amped up, and they might work just as well on you as they would if you didn't have that attitude. The reality is that the vast majority of people a young girl encounters have no sinister intent for her, will never do her harm, and she need not be concerned about them. But when she gets the signal, just as with women, then it's important to respond to the intuitive signal. However, it's happening at a time when she's concerned about popularity, she's concerned about being branded as a bitch, she's concerned about being branded as anything. And so men have a particularly strong advantage when it comes to teenage girls.
Okay, I just think that's a great clip, you know. I really do think it's a great clip for so many different reasons. Now, to talk about, well, how do we put a stop to this? How do we prevent the risk of anything untoward happening to a teenager, in particular in a sexual interaction? How do we do all of that? Now, of course, we always talk about the education and open conversations with young people. No doubt about it, that's definitely important. But what this gentleman is talking about keeps bringing the point up that this is not certain personalities that are vulnerable in the teenager stage. It's not like the way you bring your child up makes them vulnerable in the teenager stage. It's like that is That's human nature. That's more powerful than anything we can control. Right? That's like the nature of a human being at that stage of their life. You can educate to the high hills. You're not going to pull that out of that teenager. We're not going to be able to make teenagers not feel that insecurity, not feel that pressure, not feel that desire to experiment, not feel that overconfidence like they know everything and adults are just born in the Stone Ages and they know nothing. Like you're not going to pull that out of the child through education. But I'm not denying that education is definitely a vital ingredient to help us reduce the chances of a crime of a sexual nature being had on a teenager. No doubt about it. But I believe, and the more I do this work, the more strongly I feel about this, that the education of young people and the amount of conversation that I see on the internet is the easy conversation to have. It's the easy thing to do to make us feel like we are doing good. We are addressing this catastrophe that we have on our hands. But it's not the big piece of the puzzle, is it? It's not the real preventable measure. It's not the thing we should be addressing first. Because if we can stop the crime from happening at all, we wouldn't need to educate these children in the first place. We wouldn't need to waste their time talking about potential people that are out there to get them and exploit them. They should be in education, having conversations with those in their family about other things. Not that somebody's going to attack them. Not that somebody may rape them. Not that somebody may push them into something they don't feel comfortable with, even if they've said no. We shouldn't be in a situation where we need to educate them on those things. I know that's not reality, right? I'm not naive enough to think that there's that nature doesn't always have its dark side, right? But it's a good thing to aim for the crime never happening in the first place. It's a good thing to aim that we would live in a world where we never needed to educate children on these things. And how do we do that? And that's addressing the offender. That's addressing the person before they become an offender. And I'm not going to make this video about that, but I just want to state that because that's the big piece of the puzzle. Because if we could get people to stop committing the crime in the first place, if we could get people to stop giving in to the temptation that they've got in their head, if we could stop people from thinking that satisfying that desire is acceptable, then the crime wouldn't happen in the first place. And I just strongly believe in this the more I do this work, but that's the more difficult conversation to have, and that's why I believe it's not happening as frequently. And when I say not happening as frequently, I'm going to say in the 4.5 years now that I've been doing this work, for every 1,000 Instagram accounts or every 1,000 charities that I have seen talking about education in children and victim support, which I know is absolutely necessary, there's one Instagram account and one charity talking about how to ensure an offender never reoffends and how to encourage people to not offend in the first place if they've got this desire in their head. That is our priorities all mixed up, I believe. And that is something I want to continue trying my best to open the conversation on, because I believe that is what is going to stop the crime from continuing to happen. Makes logical sense in my mind. Let's close it there. Thank you so much for listening to this or watching this on YouTube. We will keep evolving this conversation and making engaging, interactive content. Leave your comments in the comments section for everything we've talked about. Be brave. Come into the public sphere. Open the discussion, because your comment may inspire someone else's comment and may inspire someone else's thought. You may give someone something to think about after watching this video, because I know it's difficult to put your comments in the comments section if you're watching on YouTube, because it means you need to put yourself out there. But maybe you need to put yourself out there so that we can get this conversation started, because I can't do this alone. It has to be a team effort. Thank you.